Archaeologists have uncovered a mystery. In the heart of the capital, dozens of human skulls from the days of Roman London. And the circumstances are suspicious.
Now, what they've found is a huge concentration of skulls, but very few other body parts.
Who separated these heads from their bodies? This was the London of Queen Boudica, gladiators, and all-powerful Roman emperors. Now, they're all suspects.
You're gathering tiny clues, rather like in a detective story.
For archaeologists, the race is on to identify the victims and track down the killers.
Something strange had happened to these skulls.
The outcome will rewrite the history of Roman London.
Nothing like this has ever been reported before. It's astonishing.
The whole city is the crime scene. The evidence is 2,000 years old. In the London skyline, past and present jostle for attention. It's the ever-changing face of a city on the move. And the biggest change is happening out of sight, beneath the streets. Crossrail is the biggest construction project in Europe. It's 26 miles of tunnels completing a new citywide railway network. And in 2013, as work gathered pace at Liverpool Street Station, engineers came face to face with the city's deepest secret. Human skulls by the truckload.
There were an awful lot of skulls in this very small area, apparently in the same cluster.
39 altogether, and it's happened before. For 200 years, the same story has been making headlines, with finds of skulls, but not their skeletons. Crossrail's chief archaeologist, Jay Carver, is pacing the scene of an ancient mystery.
Around this area, Liverpool Street, Finsbury Circus, London Wall, people have been finding huge numbers of skulls over the years, not so many bones from other parts of the body. It's a detective story, really. It's a murder mystery. Who are these victims?
In Victorian excavations, 100 skulls were found under this building. There were 9 more at the Bank of England in 1928. 13 under this modern office block in Moorgate. 300 skulls in total so far. And at the Crossrail site, there's a wealth of coins and pottery. To prove that the skulls are as old as London itself.
We don't really know who these people are, but we do know they're coming from layers that date to Roman London.
The Crossrail stations are nearing completion. Deep beneath London, in the place the Romans called Londinium. When the Romans invaded Britain in 55 BC, it was a patchwork of Celtic kingdoms. But from AD 43, all roads led to the vibrant new city. It was destined to be the capital until the early 5th century, the ideal location for Romans to rule Britannia.
London probably became important because it was easier to get to the rest of the country. It was handily placed so that you can immediately get to the continent if you needed to.
To explain the skulls, Jay Carver's working to a well-established theory. Roman London was the scene of a notorious massacre.
The first presumption is that these are beheading victims.
This is the prime suspect. Queen Boudica ruled the Celtic tribe of the Iceni in what is now Norfolk. When her husband died in AD 60, the Romans had Boudica flogged, and her daughters were raped. Swearing revenge, the Queen raised an army and marched to the south. According to the historian Tacitus, the Roman governor saw that Londinium could not be saved.
At first, he hesitated whether to stand and fight there. Eventually, his numerical inferiority decided him to sacrifice the single city of Londinium to save the province as a whole. Suetonius gave the signal for evacuation, but those who stayed, because they were women or old, were slaughtered by the enemy.
The crossrail skulls may be the decapitated victims of Boudica's army. And if Tacitus was right, then most of them were women. For the first time, the Boudica theory can be tested with real physical evidence. Analysis begins at the headquarters of Mola, Museum of London Archaeology. The crossrail skulls join a vast working collection of human remains. 9,000 individual Londoners from the entire history of the city. Mola's experts are at the nerve center of the investigation.
We've got all sorts of specialists working on this. Pottery studies are very important for dating different deposits. There's Roman coins all over the city, and we found a number in this particular location. They're soil studies, and that can really help us determine how skulls ended up in these positions.
Above all, Mola brings expertise in osteology, the study of human bones. But these Roman Londoners don't have skeletons, and many of the skulls are incomplete. Specialist Don Walker has almost nothing to go on.
You've just got a collection of skulls. Have they been beheaded? We can't tell because we haven't got the bones that would tell you that. And the whole thing is, the soft tissue has decomposed and all the bones have been separated.
No neck bones means no telltale cut marks left by axe or sword. The skulls could have detached by themselves when the skeleton decomposed.
It doesn't tell us anything really about whether they were decapitated or anything, because you'd expect the skull to be separate from all the other bones of the body.
The skulls reveal no sign at all of foul play. But as Natasha Powers demonstrates, there is one way to test the Boudica theory.
There are lots of differences between males and female skulls. And if you compare this male skull, which has a very prominent brow ridge, and then if we look at the muscle markings at the back of the head, you can see where the neck muscles attach here. It's a really strong ridge. And if you compare that with the female skull here, there's not much of a ridge at all.
The osteologists have determined sex for 30 of the skulls, but it doesn't fit the profile of the Boudican rebellion.
We have, in this particular deposit, 25 males and only 5 females, so there's certainly a preponderance of males.
Most victims are male, not female. And with no signs of violence, the Boudica theory can be eliminated. But the key to the mystery may lie in the years after AD 60, with Boudica defeated and the Romans back in charge.
After the Boudican rebellion, it would appear that London thrived. They would have tried very hard to make London into a real Roman city.
The British Museum has evidence that peace was the Romans' priority. This is the tomb of Gaius Classicianus, the procurator, responsible for all financial matters. A Celt by birth, he was brought in from the continent to win over local hearts and minds. Classicianus fostered a booming economy. Thanks to his guidance, Londinium enjoyed decades of prosperity. But if the city was so peaceful, then what's the explanation for the crossrail skulls? The evidence points to an ingenious theory. In Roman times, the river Walbrook cut through the middle of Londinium. North of the city, it ran past the edge of the site where the crossrail skulls were found. Further upstream, there were cemeteries. While excavating these cemeteries in 2003, Natasha Powers found the graves had been disturbed.
It was clear that something strange was going on. There seemed to be parts of articulated people in places that we weren't really expecting them to be. It didn't take long to work out that that might be to do with flooding.
The theory is that the crossrail skulls were flooded out of these cemeteries by the river. But why skulls and not skeletons? Charlie Thompson and Sam Griffith plan to find out by simulating the flood in the lab.
Turn the camera on. Can you tell me when the water's coming?
Yes. Trickling through now.
This is a race between plastic replicas. Skull versus thigh bone.
It's going about 20 centimetres per second at the moment.
Sam cranks up the flow rate, and the skull starts to move.
So there's more energy that acts upon the surface of that skull than it does the long bone, which tends to expose a relatively small area to the flow. Skulls roll much easier, and so once it starts to roll, it's more likely to be transported by the water.
When cemeteries flood, skulls travel. Longer bones are left behind.
In the case of the crossrail skulls, it's very reasonable to think that they're going to be moved at the same rate and therefore deposited as a cluster together because they're all of a similar size and shape.
In theory, the skulls finally washed up on the same riverbank at the crossrail site. But Don Walker finds details that are harder to explain. Some skulls are polished to a sheen, while others have a mysterious pockmarking.
The pockmarking on some of the skulls is something that, personally, I've not seen before. And it's really interesting trying to understand how this could have happened.
Charlie and Sam think they can find out with a half-buried sheep skull. It has the same density as human bone.
I'll take it up to 50 hertz.
At low speeds, fine gravel gets sucked into the flow, sandblasting the skull.
Yeah, the small one's moving quite
moving.
nicely. That's 70 hertz now.
70 hertz,
So
yeah,
we've got really good transport around the back.
When Charlie cranks it up to flood conditions, there's a step change.
And again, some nice impacts on the skull.
Yeah.
Now the big stuff lifts off the bottom and does some real damage.
We start to see this very strong sort of wear pattern, this really distinctive high-energy wear.
There are some larger pock marks, and these are impacts by quite large gravel sizes, 3 to 4 centimeters in diameter.
The experiment shows that everything depends on the river conditions. In light flooding, the skulls are finely polished by gravel. But in a deluge, heavy stones create a moonscape.
All these factors come into play, and it's a very complicated picture. The violence of the water action.
There seem to be rather a lot of pebbles stuck within the orbit of this chap, and one of the possibilities is that they've been forced in there by the water.
The flood theory seems to be a complete and compelling explanation of all the evidence.
We've got a cross-section of the population being washed out of a cemetery upstream and then ending up in these collections of skulls around the Walbrook River.
The flooding theory fits the known history of a peaceful Roman London. The skulls came from ordinary citizens who just happened to be buried too close to the river. But one archaeologist is not convinced.
The question is, was the city a place of peace and prosperity, or is something different going on?
He thinks the skulls are the result of a single cataclysm that shattered the peace of Londinium. Crossrail excavations at Liverpool Street Station have uncovered 39 skulls from Roman London. But it's difficult to establish precise dates for the skulls themselves. Carbon dating gives a range of dates between 80 and 380 AD, almost the entire span of the Roman occupation. But Crossrail's J. Carver is intrigued by wooden structures found near the river that runs through the site.
The wood appears to be doors or gates that have been reused against the river channel, probably as some form of jetty.
Wood can be dated much more precisely by dendrochronology, the science of measuring the rate of growth in the original tree rings.
Well, the dendrochronology is a really important piece of dating evidence because it tells us that the wood used in the structure was felled in about 120 AD. So clearly these skulls are being deposited after that date.
In 120 AD, the Roman Empire was ruled by the Emperor Hadrian. A coin found on the site and dated by Moeller's experts was minted no later than 122 AD, the year Hadrian came to Londinium in person.
Hadrian was one of the few emperors who visited almost every province in his empire. If an emperor came to a province, in the main city, they would have a massive rebuilding project. They would put up buildings specially to show the emperor how marvellous this new province was and how Romanised it had become.
The showpiece was the Forum Basilica, the largest building north of the Alps. By the time Hadrian came to town, Londinium was at its zenith.
He was establishing a little Rome, all the civilised things that a Roman would expect to have.
Archaeologist Dom Perring believes the dating to Hadrian's reign is highly significant. But he doesn't think the flooded cemetery theory can explain all the skulls found in London. There are just too many of them.
300-odd skulls have been found, but there are many, many more in there. I reckon it's about 5% of the total sample we've looked at, so from 300, multiply up, I mean, there could be as many as 6,000 out there. That's an awful lot of people.
It's too many to have washed out of cemeteries in dribs and drabs. Instead, Dom thinks the city suffered a single massive calamity in the decade of Hadrian's visit.
Things are going on in the 120s in Britain. We have far too many skulls in the ground to simply see these as being incidental, accidental. We've got a major event that's causing them to come into the archaeological record.
His first piece of evidence is Hadrian's coin.
There's another important coin sequence that comes from Alexandria, where they're dated very precisely to the years sort of 124 to 126. And those coins refer to victory, some kind of success. Where? We don't know. Could it be Britain? We don't know.
The next clue is in the British Museum. It was found in the Thames in the 19th century. A head, ripped from Hadrian's statue.
Where does it come from? Why has the emperor lost his head? What's that doing in the river?
For Dom, it all ties into a discovery he made in 1978. It was his very first London excavation. within sight of St. Paul's Cathedral. In Hadrian's day, the site was close to where the river Walbrook met the Thames. Then, as now, in the heart of the city. 40 years ago, Dom found evidence of Roman London's rise and fall.
This is where we found some of London's finest early Roman townhouses, mosaic floors, clay walls, beautiful buildings.
A Roman soldier lived here. The Museum of London has a recreation of the interior. For an army officer, the man had lived in some comfort. The mosaic floor was the first ever found in a Roman townhouse in Britain. The find seemed to confirm that life was good in Hadrian's London. This was a place where Romans could do business.
Merchants arrive, there's a busy, thriving city, there's new buildings going up, public buildings, a whole range of new things going on in London. And by the early 2nd century, it was a prosperous, busy city. And then it was devastated by a fire.
Dom and his colleagues found burnt bricks and charred debris all over the site. They dated the fire to around 125 AD. No one knows where it started, but it swept through the entire city. It was a great fire of Londinium.
On this site in particular, in front of us at what we had parts of upper stories of buildings that collapsed in on the structures as they came down. There's even some human remains that may have been somebody trapped in one of the buildings as it burned. And that destruction was absolute, total.
Historians have always thought the fire was a disastrous accident. But for Dom, the Crossrail discovery changes everything.
It does seem an incredible coincidence that these skulls are dated to broadly the same period. This does beg the question, are these two somehow related? Is there a connection between the fire and the skulls?
Dom's building a new theory, based on groundbreaking work at a different site. It shows that Hadrian's London was saturated in violence.
The last 10 years or so has seen enormous strides being made in the study of human remains. And Rebecca Redfern's work is absolutely at the forefront of this. Her study of the skulls from the London Wall area have brought an enormous amount of new information.
Rebecca Redfern, an osteologist at the Museum of London, has reopened a cold case from their archives. The original investigation scene is now just a row of shops.
It's about a minute's walking distance from the Crossrail site, and what it's showing us is that this is all part of one landscape.
Here in 1988, archaeologists made a familiar discovery. There were 39 skulls on the site.
It has all these pits with these human remains in, but only people's heads. So I was very excited about what I could find.
Rebecca is a seasoned explorer of Roman London, thanks to the museum's extensive collection of human remains.
I really wish I could go back because it just must have been such a fascinating place. We have people from North Africa, we have people from Greece and Turkey and Rome itself, so it is like a microcosm of the empire. And if they're eating figs in the Mediterranean, they're doing it at Moorgate. It's just amazing.
These skulls paint a new and disturbing picture of Londinium. They all belong to men, aged between 20 and 45, and each one suffered a horrendous death.
People are spending quite a lot of time killing these people. They go above and beyond what is necessary to kill someone, and this is because people have multiple injuries.
There are massive blows from blunt instruments.
The whole side of this person's face is missing.
Some wounds healed.
We've got damage to the nasal area.
Some were lethal.
That's where a weapon has just been put into the side of their head.
There are blade wounds of all kinds.
You can see this distinctive hole. Something has been pushed into their head with such violence that you have this fracture line here.
The tiniest wound is the most telling.
On this one, there is a very discreet little nick, and that's where a sharp blade came into the side of this person's face. You do see these where people have been decapitated. They have gone over and above what is necessary. The people delivering these weapons are trained, they know what they're doing, they know how to effectively kill someone.
Rebecca's evidence suggests the worst excesses of Rome had come to London. Highly trained killers were entertaining the public just a few minutes' walk from where the skulls were found. The owners of these skulls died in Roman London by horrific violence. Osteologist Rebecca Redfern thinks they may have been gladiators. The skulls were found just a few hundred yards from where they would have died, at Londinium's amphitheatre. For archaeologist Dom Perring, the skulls reveal Roman London for what it really was.
The amphitheatre is a very key symbol of the identity of Roman London. People were quite used to seeing blood. This was a violent society in a violent world.
Gladiators fought to the death for the entertainment of the masses. Even the winners sustained massive injuries. The losers were simply dispatched.
And the ritualization of violence, the bringing of that into one place, was a way of the state, in a sense, owning violence and engaging others with it. That forms that shiver down your spine kind of entertainment. It was gruesome.
Dom's trying to link the skulls to the Great Fire that destroyed Roman London. He now believes that violence was involved. But it's hard to see how gladiators alone could make up the numbers.
The particular group that Rebecca Redfern looked at could well be from the amphitheatre. But you cannot make that an explanation that works across the board for 6,000 other skulls in London. There must be some other reason.
Rebecca's next piece of detective work opens up a whole new line of inquiry. A fragment of skull revealed a minuscule clue.
I know it looks a bit funny, but this is actually their nose. So if I turn it over, we can see inside that there are these holes, and these holes are part of the sinus.
There was something trapped in the cavity, broken into tiny fragments. At first, Rebecca couldn't tell what it was.
If we had a microscope, we'd be able to see that it has a shiny surface with lots of little indentations in it, and that helps us identify it to a species. What we've got here are the tiny fragments of a beetle wing case. A beetle ends up being lodged up this person's nose for 2,000 years, just waiting to be found, and it's just absolutely remarkable.
It's the lifestyle of this particular beetle that turns the investigation on its head.
The indentations in the surface are very, very distinctive. And so what an expert was able to tell me is that this is a very special kind of beetle that only lives in shallow, stagnant water. You wouldn't find this beetle if they're in a river, because the water is fresh, it's fast flowing.
These skulls didn't flood out of a cemetery. They were deliberately placed in stagnant water by human hands.
To the best of our knowledge, nothing like this has ever been reported before. It's astonishing.
It's perfect timing in the investigation of the Crossrail skulls. As the excavation enters its final phase, there's been another discovery. There are 20 more skulls at Liverpool Street Station, a few feet apart and approximately in a straight line.
So what we've uncovered just in the last day is a number of skulls appearing in this area. They're actually mostly upside down, so they're not completely obvious. There's literally a line stretching from there, is the last one we found, all the way back to the end of the dig, where there's 2 more down the other end.
The archaeologists have uncovered a Roman road leading all the way to the river Walbrook. The 20 skulls were in a ditch along the whole of one side.
Here we've got a group of skulls that can't have been washed into place by a river. They're set in a row in quite a small roadside ditch. These are placed, these are put there, they're not washed there. These take us onto a whole new level.
Dom's homing in on the link between the skulls and the Great Fire of Londinium. Because if the skulls were put there on purpose, then maybe the fire was no accident either.
The question is the one thing that can tie all of this evidence together and tell us what is really going on.
Dom's focusing on a scrap of information that has always puzzled Roman scholars. A single sentence in a letter from the historian Fronto to Hadrian's grandson, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
Under the rule of your grandfather Hadrian, what a number of soldiers were killed by the Jews. What a number were killed by the Britons.
Fronto is writing about all the casualties that Rome has suffered. That's to put death in Britain alongside the deaths in Judea, where a vast war with many, many thousands of casualties had been fought. That suggests that something very serious is going on. Why? When?
Fronto was describing a war, and Romans killed by Celtic Britons. But why would the Celts put their victims' heads on display? Dom believes the answer can be found in the history books.
They cut off the heads of enemies slain in battle and fasten them about the necks of their horses. They hand over the blood-stained spoils to their attendants to carry off as booty, while singing a hymn of victory. Some of them boast that they refused the weight of the head in gold.
Dom's research takes him far from London, to the Celtic tribes of continental Europe. This is Roc Petous in southern France. All that's left is a few ruined stones. But it was once a shrine to Celtic warrior culture. So intimidating that the Romans tried to wipe it from the face of the earth.
It's an awesome experience to be able to walk into a site where you feel so clearly how it must have been at the time the Romans came here. What you do see are the foundations of the rural sanctuary that stood here. What you don't see are the buildings that stood on those foundations and the things that adorned them, the human skulls.
The true meaning of sites like Roc Petous has been preserved at the Musée Granet. Stone sculpture, capturing the Celtic veneration of the human head.
It's a thrill to be faced with these quite scary, quite real, vivid people. What we've got here is a pile of heads. Heads at the feet and the knees of a warrior. Each of these heads clearly a dead one.
These heads came from another shrine at Entremont. Celtic warriors believed they could absorb the spirits of defeated enemies.
Each soul is a lost soul that we're still being reminded of here. The hand is shown grasping the victim, and that is I own you, I own your soul, I own who you are.
Stone heads are one thing, but at Roc Petous, real human skulls were embedded in the architecture. A stark Celtic message to their enemies.
They're trophy heads. This is headhunting.
Back in London, Dom thinks the Crossrail skulls were displayed in a similar way. But if these were Romans, headhunted by Celtic warriors, they're at the wrong end of Britain. In the 120s, the fighting was in the north. Its enduring symbol is Hadrian's Wall. 73 miles of front line, defending civilized Roman Britain against northern barbarians. Every 5 miles, there was a fort packed with all the troops the Roman Empire could muster.
You get Batavians from the Netherlands, you get Tungrians from Belgium, you get Asturians from Spain.
But with the army massed on the wall, the Romans were vulnerable elsewhere.
It's quite possible that this left a vacuum behind, that those people who were not happy with Roman rule in the south may have regarded this as a good opportunity to raise a rebellion.
For Dom Perring, the skulls suggest this southern rebellion really happened. But he still needs the clinching evidence, and there's only one place to find it: the Crossrail excavation. Archaeologist Dom Perring believes the Crossrail skulls may be Roman victims of a Celtic rebellion.
So that is part of the roadside ditch? Yeah, we think so.
If he's right, the rebellion caused a great fire that wiped out Roman London. The archaeologists have found no traces of fire on the site, but Dom thinks this part of Londinium was laid out afterwards.
If you can start to pull together dates from what you're doing up here that push these activities to that a bit later in the 120s, you make it post-fire, makes a lot of sense.
Well, that's literally the only chance we've had for dendro is these two reused doors that were laid down next to the Walbrook.
It's dendro.
Some little platform next to the river channel, we imagine.
But you don't get better than dendro.
Dom believes the dendro evidence is critical, dating the skulls to the 120s AD. But it's the Roman road that really gets his attention.
And you can probably notice the camber of the road if you follow that orange layer, and then to about that point you can see it all dips down into this big U-shaped ditch. And we've found the other ditch in the northern excavation we've done a few months ago, that side, so we'll be able to reconstruct the line of this Roman road and precisely, how it was constructed.
There must have been a bridge, because everything lines up with another stretch of road on the other side of the Walbrook. No one knows how far it went or what it was for. Did the road play its part in a war, as Celtic Britons fought back against Roman occupation? For Dom Perring, it's the final piece of the puzzle. Now he just has to figure out how it fits in.
They built a bridge to cross the Walbrook. Why? What's that road doing there? Roman roads tend to go somewhere.
If Celtic headhunters defeated the Romans, then why did Roman rule last another 300 years?
Why has the emperor lost his head?
Their heads have been put in pits. What happened to them?
In 120 AD, all roads led to Londinium.
London is like a microcosm of the empire.
You get Tungrians from Belgium.
40 years after his first excavation,
You get Asturians from Spain.
Dom Perring sees what he's been missing all along.
Military zone was in the
They're
north.
eating figs in the Mediterranean.
Roman London was a melting pot.
There's no such thing as a Roman London.
What we see here is headhunting.
There's no such thing as a Roman London.
What we see here
Roman soldiers could come from anywhere in the Roman Empire.
It's the end of the road. Dom thinks he's solved the mystery of the Crossrail skulls. And he's come to the headquarters of the killers. In the 120s AD, the full military might of Rome came crashing down on London. The walls of a vast new fort loomed over the city. But the fort wasn't built for Romans to fight the Celts. These Romans were Celts. The evidence is carved on Trajan's column in Rome itself. It shows that after the conquest of Celtic Europe, its warriors joined the Roman army. But they hadn't lost their taste for headhunting. Now they were in London, in a fort the size of 8 football pitches. The site is now an underground car park, and it's absolutely immense.
Walking along what must be the longest car park I think I've ever seen. About now, I think we're probably crossing into the fort itself, somewhere near the east gate.
In a city of just 30,000 people, the fort was manned by 1,500 infantry and cavalry.
And in front of us now, I can see the end of this car park, which is the site of the west gate into the fort, giving us a sense of the sheer scale of this place.
The ruins are still impressive, despite layers of medieval stone and Victorian brickwork. Dom thinks the fort imposed lockdown on a city in revolt.
The twist is that here we have Celtic headhunting, but it's embedded within the Roman army. This is an accepted military practice here in London and in Britain.
The fort sent out the same message as Hadrian's Wall. It didn't just look like the front line. Londinium was the front line. If London had really been at peace, it wouldn't have needed a major military installation. The skulls explain why the Romans had to build it.
The crossrail skulls are a game changer. And the explanations that we're now looking at suggest that it might be associated with the re-establishment of peace after an act of civil insurrection.
Dom believes a rebellion by Celtic Britons led to Londinium's destruction by fire. But it was head-hunting Celts in the Roman army who reimposed order, and the new road played a vital strategic role.
The road allows troops to be deployed in and around London without having to go through the city centre.
The road went north, towards the frontiers of Britannia. But it branched east for rapid access to Londinium via the Walbrook Bridge. It was the perfect place for troops to dump their trophy heads.
If we're finding hundreds, there must have been thousands in the ground originally. These relate to a war of a very significant scale.
Could there really have been a huge war in southern Britain that didn't reach the history books? The simple answer is yes. The Roman governor, like any politician, kept a tight lid on bad news.
It probably was not a good idea to let the emperor know if you were hitting problems. The emperor wanted to hear this was all going really well. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was evidence of rebellions all over the country.
For Dom Perring, the Southern Rebellion against Hadrian's rule is the best possible theory to fit the facts.
We've got these three big pieces of evidence. We've got the fort, we've got the fire, and we have these skulls. I find it enormously attractive to see these three coming together with one explanation that makes sense of all of the evidence we have.
For now, the mystery continues. Rebecca Redfern's skulls were found close to both the fort and the amphitheatre. Her cold case remains unsolved.
They're either killed in the arena as gladiators or as prisoners, or else they represent trophy heads taken by the military. Until we have more evidence about where they've come from and their own life histories, we can't definitely say which.
And then there's the third and most ingenious theory.
This area where we've been digging is right in the middle of a typical Roman cemetery.
Moeller's experts think there was no killer. The crossrail skulls were put there by the river.
They're the same basic shape, and they would end up in roughly the same place.
For Crossrail's chief archaeologist, Jay Carver, the detailed investigation is only just beginning. But it's already bursting with fresh evidence and new lines of inquiry.
I mean, it's quite early days of the Crossrail discoveries, and we've got several years of analysis to do. The great thing about this mystery is we've got three very distinct theories, and they're all equally feasible.
There may be more twists in the mystery of the Crossrail skulls.